My name is Lieutenant Commander Sarah Cole, United States Navy, and the night I broke protocol still wakes me up at 3 a.m. Sometimes I hear the rain against the window, and I'm back on that dark Florida road, headlights cutting through the storm, my uniform damp with salt and regret. That was the night I disobeyed orders and found 2 lost children who changed everything I believed about duty, mercy, and what it means to serve. It began after a week-long relief mission along the coast. We'd delivered food blankets and generators to communities hit hard by a tropical storm. My convoy had just cleared the last checkpoint near Jacksonville when command radioed return to Mayport Base for debriefing. The road was half flooded, the kind of back route only locals used. The wipers slapped uselessly as I tried to keep my truck centered on the narrow asphalt. Then my headlights caught something, 2 small figures huddled beside a broken-down SUV. At first I thought I was seeing things. The rain distorted everything, turning shadows into movement. But as I slowed down, I saw them clearly, a little boy and girl soaked to the bone, clutching each other under a blanket that looked more like a towel. No adult in sight. My first instinct was to call base security, but when I rolled down my window, I heard the girl's voice, thin, shaking. "Please, ma'am. Our mom said she'd come back." Protocol was clear. In emergencies, we report civilians to local authorities, not bring them home. But there was something in their faces, pale, frightened, trying to stay brave, that cut through every rule I'd memorized. I told them to get in the truck. The boy hesitated, shielding his sister, and I said quietly, "You're safe now, I promise." He looked at me for a long moment before nodding. Back at base housing, I dried them off, found old sweats from my niece's last visit, and heated canned soup. They ate like they hadn't seen food in days. I asked for their names. The boy said Evan. The girl whispered Lily. They didn't know their last name, or wouldn't say. Their story came in pieces. They'd been in the car with their mother. She'd left to find help, and she never came back. That first night I sat at the kitchen table staring at my phone. I knew I should call this in. The manual was etched into my bones. Report document, verify. But what would happen if I did? They'd be processed, handed over to social services, lost in paperwork. And deep down, I felt something else, a pull. I'd been the daughter of a Navy man my whole life. My father died saving a stranded family during Hurricane Andrew. Maybe it was his voice I heard whispering, "You know what the right thing is." The next morning the storm had passed. The sun came out sharp and blinding. Evan was already up, folding the blanket neatly like a sailor's bunk. Lily sat at the window, drawing in the condensation with her finger, a house, a tree, and what looked like 3 stick figures holding hands. She smiled when I asked about it. "That's us," she said, "and you." Days passed quietly. I went to base for short shifts, leaving them with a neighbor who didn't ask questions. I checked with local law enforcement, but no missing child report matched. Each night I'd find them asleep on the couch, holding hands, even in dreams. There was something disciplined about them, how they said, "Yes, ma'am," how they lined up their shoes by the door. Once Evan pointed at my uniform ribbons and asked, "Were you in the storm last year too?" He seemed to recognize the medals. I wondered who had taught him that. By the 5th day I started noticing a black sedan parked down the street. Different driver, same dark tint. The first time I brushed it off. The second time I noted the plates, temporary, out of state. That evening when I stepped outside with the trash, I saw the silhouette of a man inside the car. He didn't move, didn't start the engine, just watched. A voice inside me whispered that I was in over my head. Maybe these kids weren't what they seemed. Maybe someone was looking for them. But when I turned back toward the warm light of my house and saw Lily's small face peeking from behind the curtain, I knew there was no turning back. That night I sat by their door listening to the rain start again. I thought of my father, how he'd broken orders once too. The Navy called it reckless compassion. My mother called it heroism. He died helping strangers, and she never forgave the ocean for it. Now here I was doing the same thing, defying protocol because something in me couldn't let go of 2 frightened children. Just past midnight I received a call from an unknown number. Static. Then silence. Then a male voice, "Lieutenant Commander Cole, leave the house. Now." The line cut. My stomach dropped. I rushed to check the windows, no movement. Just rain and the glint of headlights down the street. I locked every door and sat with my service pistol on my lap until dawn. In the morning, the kids were still asleep. The black car was gone. But in the puddle by the curb, I saw it a boot print, deep and deliberate military issue. Something told me this wasn't about lost children anymore. It was about something larger, hidden and dangerous. And I had just stepped right into it. The next morning, sunlight poured through the blinds like nothing had happened. The air smelled clean, washed free of salt and fear, but my nerves didn't settle. I brewed coffee, checked the locks twice, and found the kids already awake. Evan had set the table, 2 bowls, 2 spoons milk, and cereal lined up with the precision of a junior sailor. Lily hummed quietly, still wearing the oversized navy sweatshirt that almost swallowed her. I asked if they'd slept well. "Yes, ma'am." Evan said the ma'am so crisp it caught me off guard. "You were in the Navy too, right?" he asked. "Still am," I replied. His face softened like that answer gave him permission to breathe. After breakfast, I checked my phone. No missed calls, no messages, nothing unusual. Still, the boot print outside kept replaying in my mind. Military issue, but not from my base. Our standard was different. I ran a quick search through the local database. No alerts, no trespassing reports. If someone had been there, they knew how to disappear. That afternoon, I stopped by the commissary for supplies. The store was half empty, still recovering from the storm. As I walked through the aisles, I caught myself glancing at every shopper, half expecting to see someone watching me. Maybe I was paranoid, but when I turned down the canned goods aisle, a tall man in a baseball cap looked up from his phone too quickly, too directly. When I met his eyes, he turned away and left his cart behind. I drove home on the back roads, heart hammering. The kids were on the porch waiting. Evan had rigged a little flagpole out of broomsticks and an old towel, waving it like a distress signal. Lily was laughing, her cheeks pink in the sun. For a moment, the world felt normal again. Then a chill ran through me as I noticed a subtle reflection off a car window, 2 houses down, a glint of glass, the brief outline of a camera lens. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat by the kitchen window with a notepad, scribbling possibilities like a tactical report. Missing persons case, custody dispute, human trafficking, classified operation gone wrong. Every scenario led back to the same question: why me, why them? I thought about calling my CO at Mayport, Commander Jensen, but he was by the book. If I admitted I'd taken the children home without authorization, I'd be relieved of duty in a heartbeat. The Navy doesn't deal kindly with unauthorized custody. Still, I couldn't do nothing. So I reached out to someone who'd once owed my father a favor, Lieutenant Mark Davis, JAG Corps. We'd met years ago at a training conference, and he'd said, "If you ever need something looked into, quietly call me." I decided to test that promise. When he picked up, his voice was low and steady. "Cole, been a long time." "Too long," I said. "I need to run a name, or rather 2 first names. No last name, both under 10. He chuckled. "That's not much to go on. They showed up after the storm," I said. "Their mother's missing. There's something off." I found a military boot print outside my place. Silence then. "Send me what you have. I'll see what shakes loose." After hanging up, I looked toward the kids' room. Lily had fallen asleep clutching one of my old ribbons. Evan was awake, pretending not to be. I asked if he wanted water. He hesitated, then whispered, "Ma'am." "Are we in trouble?" "No," I said softly. "But I think someone's looking for you." His small shoulders stiffened. "Not Mom, I don't know yet." He nodded and stared at the ceiling, whispering to himself words I could barely catch. Dad said to trust the uniform. The next few days were quiet, too quiet. No black car, no calls, but my gut told me the calm wouldn't last. I cleaned the pistol, double-checked the alarm, and taught Evan how to lock the windows just in case. He took to it like training. Lily drew pictures of boats, huge, beautiful ships with flags and waves. "That's yours," she said proudly, pointing to a figure on deck. "You saved us." On the 6th morning, my phone buzzed. It was Mark Davis. His tone had changed, clipped serious. "Cole, you need to listen carefully. The kids, Evan and Lily Merritt. Their parents died 2 weeks ago in what's being called an accident." "Called an accident?" I repeated. "Yeah, car went off a bridge in Virginia. The case is sealed. But there's chatter about inheritance issues. Defense contracting money, big money. So these kids, they're heirs to the Merritt estate, he said. Someone's trying to find them before the courts can. The line crackled. Cole, you need to be careful. You might have already been made. After that call, I stood motionless in my kitchen, staring at the refrigerator magnets shaped like ships. It all clicked: the black car, the camera lens, the fake IDs. I'd been protecting 2 children who were more valuable than I could have imagined, and somewhere out there someone wanted them back. Or gone. That evening I made spaghetti. The kids ate in silence. I forced a smile and asked if they wanted to watch a movie. Lily picked Finding Nemo. Halfway through, she fell asleep against my arm. Evan watched the credits roll, then said almost to himself, "Mom said the bad guys wear nice shoes." When I tucked him in, he gripped my wrist and whispered, "Promise you won't let them take us." "I promise," I said, even though my voice trembled. As the house went quiet, I realized the promise wasn't just for them, it was for my father, for the uniform, for everything I still believed the Navy stood for. I'd made a vow to serve and protect. Now that vow had a face. 2 of them. It was a quiet Sunday morning when the knock came. 3 slow raps, deliberate, unhurried, like someone who already knew I was home. I peeked through the curtain and froze. The black sedan was back. 2 men stood on the porch, both in dark suits, their posture too perfect for civilians. One older gray at the temples, eyes shielded by aviator sunglasses. The other younger, sharp-cut hair scanning the street like he was assessing a perimeter. I opened the door halfway, keeping the chain on. "Can I help you?" The older man gave a professional smile. "Lieutenant Commander Sarah Cole." He knew my name. My stomach sank. "Yes. I'm Agent Thorne," he said, showing a badge too quickly for me to read. "This is Agent Miller. We're with Federal Protective Services. We've been looking for 2 minors believed to be in your custody." His phrasing believed to be felt rehearsed. "They were stranded during the storm," I said carefully. "I took them in for safety. Their parents haven't come forward." He nodded, tone measured. "We appreciate your initiative, Commander. The children belong to a family involved in an ongoing federal matter. We'll take them from here." I didn't unchain the door. I'll need official verification before releasing them. Thorne tilted his head, amused. "Commander, we're the verification." That's when Lily peeked around the hallway corner. "Miss Sarah, who's that?" she asked. Both men turned toward her, voice like trained dogs. "Go back inside, sweetheart," I said softly. But Evan stepped into view behind her, his chin lifted. "Those aren't real agents," he said. "Mom told me the real ones wear the flag on the right side." Thorne's eyes hardened. "Son, your mother isn't in a position to advise you anymore." The chill in his tone made my pulse spike. I slid the door shut and locked it. "You'll wait outside," I said through the frame, "while I confirm your credentials." "Ma'am, I advise you not to." But I'd already grabbed my phone. Base security Mayport. Before I could finish, tires screeched outside. The younger man cursed. The older hissed, "Let's go." Through the window, I watched the sedan speed off, taillights slicing through the humid morning fog. My heart was pounding. The kids were both crying now, the kind of silent, chest-shaking fear that only happens when they've seen this before. I called Mark Davis immediately. He picked up on the second ring. "They came," I said. 2 men, fake IDs, knew my name. He swore under his breath. "Cole, this is escalating fast." I pulled some more files. The Merritt estate isn't just big, it's global. Defense contracts, private security firms, offshore accounts. Those kids are heirs to a company that manufactures targeting systems. I tried to process it. "You're saying weapons money." "Exactly. Billions. And someone's trying to secure control before they turn 18. The so-called Guardian has been hiring private agents, ex-military, no oversight." "Ex-military," I repeated, remembering the boot print outside. "Stay calm, Cole," he said. "You're not safe there. I'll get an official order to transfer custody into federal hands, but you'll need to hold tight for 24 hours. Don't trust anyone who knocks." After hanging up, I looked at the children sitting on the couch. Lily's eyes were red, clutching a stuffed dolphin I'd given her. Evan sat stiffly, his hand trembling as he tried to look brave. "You did good," I told him quietly. "You trusted your instincts." He swallowed. "Are we going back?" Not yet, I said. Not until we know who's really looking for you. I spent the rest of the day double-checking every lock, every window, every angle from which someone could see inside. Years of Navy logistics training kicked in systematic security evaluation, contingency planning, fallback routes. I even pulled out an old satellite phone from my deployment trunk just in case the lines went down. When night fell, I let the kids sleep in my room. Lily whispered, "Can you leave the light on?" "Of course," I said. Around 2 a.m., the sound of an engine idling reached my ears. I turned off the lamp and crept to the window. The sedan was back, same one, headlights off, parked under the streetlight. But this time I saw a third silhouette in the back seat. Someone older. Someone who didn't move. I picked up the phone and called Mark again, whispering, "They're outside." He told me to stay put and promised to alert base security. 15 minutes later, a patrol car rolled through. The sedan vanished before it reached the street. When the officer knocked, I recognized him. Chief Petty Officer Burke, retired. He used to serve with my father. "Burke," I asked, stunned, "what are you doing on patrol?" He smiled, too casual. "Filling in for a buddy tonight. Heard you've got a situation." Something in his voice was wrong, smooth, calculated. I realized his uniform didn't have the current base patch. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You should have reported those kids, Sarah. You don't know who you're dealing with." "Who are they?" I demanded. He smirked. "Collateral. Wrong place, wrong family. Don't make the same mistake your old man did." Before I could reply, he stepped back, tipped his cap, and walked away into the dark. The patrol car drove off. I locked the door and stood shaking. My father's name, why mention him now? The kids slept soundly, unaware of how close danger had come. I sat by the window until dawn, watching the street stay empty and silent. I'd always thought revenge was a choice, something that lived far from honor. But that night I realized sometimes revenge hides behind the word justice, and sometimes it wears a badge. By morning, my nerves felt stretched thin as a tripwire. I'd barely slept, pacing between the window and the kids' door, waiting for the next knock. The sunrise brought no comfort, just humid Florida air, and a thick silence that felt wrong. I brewed a pot of coffee, hands trembling slightly as I poured. Evan sat at the table, sketching a little boat on scrap paper using a blue pen he'd found. "It's the kind that doesn't sink," he said with quiet certainty. I wished I believed him. Mark Davis called just after 0800. His voice came through tight and clipped. "Cole, I found something. You need to hear this." I put the phone on speaker so I could keep my eyes on the window. "Go ahead." He took a deep breath. "You were right to be cautious. The Merritt family wasn't just rich, they were contracting royalty. Their company, Merritt Dynamics, holds major Navy supply and defense tech deals. The father, Richard Merritt, died in a car crash that doesn't add up. And get this, the case was closed within 48 hours, sealed by a private legal team, not federal investigators." "Meaning?" I asked. "Meaning someone with influence buried it. And those two men who came to your house, Thorne and Miller, they're not agents. They're private contractors, ex-Navy intel, now working for Merritt Dynamics Board of Trustees. Their job is to retrieve the heirs before the estate hearing next week." I felt my blood chill. Retrieve, not rescue. Exactly. If they control the kids, they control the assets. Billions, Cole. And if you're in possession of those children, you've just become an obstacle. I looked toward the hallway where Lily's drawing from the day before hung on the wall, 3 stick figures holding hands under a sun. Then what do I do? "First, stay calm," Mark said. "Second, don't go through normal channels. I'm routing a friend from the Office of Naval Intelligence. She owes me a favor, but you'll need proof, something tying the contractors to the company." "I've got Burke," I said suddenly. "He was here last night wearing a fake patrol uniform. He mentioned my father." "Your father?" Mark paused. "As in Captain Thomas Cole?" "Yes." Another pause. "Cole, your father testified against Burke back in 2006. Procurement fraud, falsified fuel invoices. Burke was forced into early retirement. That means he's got motive and connections in the private sector." I exhaled sharply, so this goes back years. "Looks like it," Mark said. "Burke's name appeared in one of Merritt Dynamics' subcontractor lists last year. Logistics liaison. He's the bridge between your father's legacy and this mess." I stared at the wall, my throat tight. Then this isn't just about the kids. It's about finishing what my dad started. That night I couldn't sit still. I set up my old laptop connecting through a secure Navy VPN and pulled up archived procurement records. My father's report's grainy scans of handwritten memos popped onto the screen. Each document showed Burke's signature beside supply discrepancies, fuel shipments that never reached their destinations, millions of taxpayer dollars unaccounted for. One note caught my eye. Suspect partnership between Merit Dynamics and internal Navy logistics personnel. Keep records off mainline database. TC. He'd been investigating the same company before he died, and now years later the same people were standing on my porch. The kids slept soundly in the guest room. I sat by the dim lamp staring at my father's handwriting. My entire career had been about discipline procedure, doing the right thing by the book, but the book never accounted for corruption wrapped in the flag. Around 2300 hours, my laptop pinged a message from Mark. Cole found contact Latin CMDR Julia Ramos Oni. She'll call you on an encrypted line in 10 minutes. Don't mention kids on open air. When Ramos called, her tone was brisk. You've stirred a hornet's nest, Cole. I've seen those men's files. Black contracts, untraceable ops, deep defense money. You're lucky they haven't come through your door yet. Why the interest in 2 children, I asked. Because the Merit inheritance includes controlling shares in 3 defense patents. Whoever raises those kids controls the future of those patents. You think it's about family, it's about power. Her words hit like a slap. So they're assets now, not children. That's how people like them think, she said. But listen, there's a pattern. Before Merit's death, he contacted your father's old legal advisor, the same one your dad used during his corruption case. The advisor disappeared last month. If you can find him, you'll find the link that proves who ordered all this. After she hung up, I felt the weight of it all crash down. I walked quietly to the kids' room. Evan had kicked off his blanket. I tucked it back around him, my hands trembling. He stirred and whispered, half asleep, Mom said Daddy was fixing things before the car crash. Fixing things. That phrase rattled in my chest like an echo from my father's old recordings. I went back to the kitchen and opened my father's leather case, the one I hadn't touched since his funeral. Inside were metals service pins, and a small flash drive labeled RM. I plugged it in. Files loaded video reports, contract scans, a statement draft naming Richard Merit as an informant, not a suspect. My father had been working with Merit to expose corruption in Navy contracts. They were partners, until both ended up dead. My knees nearly gave out. The children I was protecting weren't just heirs, they were the last living proof that 2 men had tried to clean up something rotten inside the system. I backed up the data onto my encrypted drive and sent it to Mark with one message. If anything happens to me, release this to the press. When I shut off the laptop, I looked around my quiet house, the soft hum of the fridge, the steady breathing from down the hall. Everything ordinary, yet nothing was the same. For the first time in my career, I realized the enemy wasn't across the ocean. It was right here behind polished desks and government contracts, hiding behind the same flag I swore to serve. And if they wanted those children, they'd have to come through me first. The next 48 hours blurred into a loop of caffeine paranoia and planning. I'd stopped sleeping altogether, running drills in my mind, rehearsing escape routes, memorizing every creak in the floorboards. Every sound outside felt amplified, the hum of a passing truck, a door shutting 2 houses down, the distant echo of waves from the shore. Mark called again. Cole, listen carefully. The data you sent, it's explosive. Your father and Richard Merit were about to expose a network of shell companies tied to defense fraud. The flash drive you found. That's the proof. If Burke or those private agents find out you have it, you're target number 1. I glanced toward the window. You think they already know? They know everything he said. I've worked long enough to recognize a pattern. They'll come tonight or tomorrow before the courts open Monday. You need to move the kids. I can't risk it, they'll track us. Mark sighed. Cole, I know your type. You think duty means standing still, but this time survival is duty. Do you understand? His voice cracked slightly, something personal, protective. I almost smiled despite the fear. You sound like my father. Then listen to him, Mark said softly and hung up. That evening I made the kids spaghetti again, just like that first night. Familiar smells helped calm them. Lily asked, Are we going to the Navy house again soon? I hesitated. Not yet, sweetheart. We're waiting for a friend to call. Evan looked up from his plate. The men in suits will come back, won't they? I couldn't lie. Probably, but we'll be ready. After dinner, I had them pack small bags, clothes, water bottles, a few toys. I hid my service pistol in a kitchen drawer under a towel. Then I taped my father's flash drive behind the refrigerator motor housing. If anyone tore this place apart, they wouldn't think to look there. At 9 p.m., the power went out. The house plunged into darkness. The hum of the fridge, the faint buzz of the ceiling light, all gone. Only silence. Then a slow creak on the front porch. Downstairs, I whispered to the kids, motioning toward the small storm cellar door near the laundry room. Evan nodded, grabbing Lily's hand. They disappeared inside as I pulled the pistol free. The next knock wasn't polite. It was the heavy thud of someone testing the frame. Then a voice, "Sarah, it's Burke. Don't do something stupid." I aimed the pistol at the door but didn't respond. "I know you're in there," he continued. "You're making the same mistake your old man did, thinking honor means defiance. He died for nothing. Don't let it happen to you." I exhaled slowly, every muscle shaking. "You disgraced that uniform long before you took it off," I called back. He chuckled. "Still righteous, huh? Well, you're harboring federal assets, technically kidnapping minors. That's a career-ending charge, sweetheart." Unless he paused, letting the silence thicken, "You hand over the files. Do that, and I can make this all go away." I felt anger spike hot in my chest. "You already made my father go away." That silence again, this time heavier. Then his voice colder. He didn't know when to stop asking questions. Neither do you. The doorknob turned, then stopped. A faint click echoed from the side window, someone trying to pry it open. I moved quietly toward the hallway and flipped the emergency breaker. The generator hummed to life, flooding the living room with yellow light. Burke's shadow froze outside the glass. Our eyes met through the window pane. He raised his hands, mocking surrender. "You think light saves you." Behind him, headlights flared, another vehicle pulling up. My heart lurched, but then I saw the Navy security insignia. A real patrol this time. Mark's doing, I realized. Burke turned, cursing, and sprinted toward the back fence. I ran after him, pistol drawn, the rain hitting hard again like the storm had been waiting for this moment. I tackled him near the shed, both of us hitting the wet grass. The gun slipped from my grip, sliding into the mud. He pinned my shoulder, snarling, "You think they'll believe you? You've been harboring fugitives." "I've been protecting children," I spat, shoving him back. "Something you forgot how to do." For a moment he froze. His eyes softened just a flicker, then hardened again. "You don't understand, Cole. The Merritts were going to destroy everything, contracts, pensions, the whole machine. Your father helped them. The system can't afford people like that." I grabbed the gun, leveling it at his chest. Then maybe the system needs a reckoning. Before either of us could move, flashlights cut through the rain. Real Navy police stormed in, weapons drawn. Burke raised his hands. "She's unstable," he shouted. "She's hiding evidence." The officer in front, Lieutenant Ramos from ONI, stepped between us. "Stand down, Burke. We have the evidence. You're done." Mark's voice came through the radio. "The data's confirmed, Ramos." Cole's father was right. Merritt Dynamics was funneling stolen Navy funds through Burke's accounts. Burke stared at me, his face pale. "You think this changes anything? They'll bury it again." Maybe I said, my voice shaking, but not with me watching. They handcuffed him, reading his rights under the rain. As they led him away, he turned once more, muttering, "You'll regret crossing the line, Cole. They always do." I stood there, drenched, the lights from the patrol cars flashing red and blue against the wet pavement. The kids peeked out from the storm cellar, their eyes wide. I knelt beside them. "It's over," I said softly, pulling them close. "You're safe now." But deep down I knew it wasn't over, because men like Burke didn't act alone. There were still names, still signatures, still people in suits who believed loyalty was for sale. And I wasn't finished, not yet. The week that followed felt both endless and suspended, like the world was holding its breath. Burke's arrest made headlines in Jacksonville, though most reports framed it as a minor contracting scandal. Nothing about the children, nothing about the Merritts, and certainly nothing about the Navy's deeper involvement. That omission said everything. Someone was still controlling the narrative. Mark called daily, his voice gravelly from lack of sleep. "The Justice Department's dragging its feet," he said. "But we got lucky Ramos pulled strings with JAG. There's going to be a closed hearing at Mayport tomorrow morning. Military tribunal plus civilian oversight." "About Burke?" "About everything he said, including you. Be ready, Cole, they'll question your actions too." "I saved 2 kids." He hesitated. "And broke 6 protocols doing it. Just keep your temper. Let the evidence speak." That night, I ironed my uniform for the first time in weeks. The gold buttons gleamed the silver oak leaves on my shoulders, perfectly aligned. As I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself, tired, gaunt, but still standing. My father's Medal of Valor hung on the dresser. I pinned it to the inside of my jacket, close to my heart. The next morning, the courtroom was cold and sterile, fluorescent lights humming above polished floors. A small flag stood behind the raised bench, flanked by 2 uniformed guards. At the center sat Judge Commander Reeves, known for his stoic expression and surgical calm. Burke entered in shackles, his smirk gone. His lawyer, a corporate type with slicked-back hair, adjusted his tie like the room belonged to him. 2 rows behind them sat men in expensive suits, silent, watchful. The merit board, no doubt. When they brought the children in under protective escort, the room shifted. Lily clutched a small stuffed dolphin. Evan walked beside her, his jaw tight, every inch his father's son. The proceedings began. Reeves spoke first. "We're here to review charges of contract fraud, falsification of procurement records, obstruction of justice, and unauthorized interference in the custody of minors under federal protection." He turned to me. "Lieutenant Commander Cole, you're also under review for disobeying direct orders, harboring civilians without clearance, and withholding evidence." I stood. "Yes, sir." He raised a brow. "Do you wish to make a statement?" "Yes, sir. I followed my oath to protect those who cannot protect themselves. If that violates a protocol, then I accept the consequences." A ripple of murmurs passed through the room. Burke's lawyer stood. "Commander, my client acted under the impression that Lieutenant Cole had illegally abducted 2 minors belonging to his employer's legal custody. He sought to retrieve them peacefully." Mark rose from the prosecution side, cutting in. "Peacefully? You mean by impersonating law enforcement, forging IDs, and threatening an active duty officer on her own property?" The lawyer sneered. "You have no proof of such." Mark held up a USB drive. "We have recordings from Cole's security system as well as recovered data from her father's investigation. Both point to a deliberate conspiracy between Mr. Burke and members of Merit Dynamics Board to seize control of the Merit children's inheritance." A sharp intake of breath echoed from the back. The suits shifted uncomfortably. Reeves leaned forward. "Play the recording." The speakers filled with the sound of rain, heavy and relentless. Then Burke's voice. "You're making the same mistake your old man did. He didn't know when to stop asking questions." The courtroom went still. Reeves looked directly at Burke. "Did you say this?" Burke swallowed hard. "I was under duress." Reeves glanced at the prosecution. "Proceed." Mark stood again. "We also recovered evidence linking Burke's accounts to multiple shell companies, funds diverted from Navy supply contracts, redirected through Merit Dynamics private subsidiaries." The late Richard Merritt was preparing to testify before the Armed Services Committee when his car went off a bridge. Lily's small voice broke the silence. "He didn't fall. Someone pushed Daddy's car." The gallery gasped. The judge's expression softened for just a second before regaining formality. "We'll strike that from the record," he said gently. "But it's noted." Burke's attorney tried to object, but Reeves cut him off. "Enough. The evidence is overwhelming." He turned to me. "Lieutenant Commander Cole, despite procedural violations, your actions directly prevented harm to minors and exposed systemic corruption within a defense contractor tied to Navy logistics. Effective immediately, all disciplinary measures are waived." I blinked. "Sir." He nodded. "Consider this an unofficial commendation under review." Burke slammed his fists on the table, shouting, "You think she's a hero? She just reopened a war you can't win." The bailiff restrained him as Reeves struck the gavel. "This hearing is concluded. "Mr. Burke, you are remanded to federal custody pending full criminal trial." The courtroom exhaled. Mark gave me a small nod from across the aisle. The kids ran toward me, Lily wrapping her arms around my waist, Evan clutching my sleeve like a soldier, saluting without words. Outside, the air smelled of salt and sunlight. The black sedan was gone, replaced by a Navy van marked "Protective Detail." The men in suits had vanished like ghosts. Mark joined me by the steps. "They'll spend years trying to bury this again," he said. "Then we'll keep digging," I replied. He smiled faintly. "You sound like your father." I looked down at the children, two small, fragile pieces of something much bigger than all of us, and said, "He taught me well." As we walked toward the waiting van, Lily tugged my hand. "Does this mean it's over?" I glanced back at the courthouse, the flag waving above it in the wind. "Not over," I said quietly. "But maybe it's beginning to be right." The weeks after the hearing felt strangely calm, like standing in the eye of a storm after the winds have torn everything loose. I stayed on temporary leave while the Navy handled what they called post-incident administrative matters. That meant debriefs, reports, interviews, paperwork stacked as high as guilt and gratitude combined. Burke's arrest had led to more names, more trails, some of them high-ranking, others conveniently resigned before they could be questioned. The media touched the story only briefly. Former Navy contractor charged in fraud scheme. They called it isolated misconduct. But I knew better, and so did Mark. Still, life began to rebuild itself piece by piece. The Merritt children were placed under the Navy's Child Protection Program, temporary guardianship, until the estate settled. Their new home was a modest white house near the Naval Academy in Annapolis, just a few miles from the water. I visited them a month later. Evan greeted me at the door in a crisp polo shirt, already taller, already trying to be a man. Lily came running with a drawing clutched in her hands, 3 figures again, but this time all smiling. "It's us," she said proudly. "You, me, and Evan. We're standing by the ocean. Daddy's boat is behind us." Her brother rolled his eyes in mock embarrassment, but his grin betrayed him. "She draws better than me," he said. Inside, the walls were lined with children's art and the faint smell of cookies. For a moment I felt something warm, like a home that wasn't mine, but still carried a piece of me. Evan showed me his new bedroom. "They let us go to school on base," he said, "and we started swimming lessons." He hesitated. "They said Dad used to swim every morning before work. I want to do that too." "You'd make him proud," I said softly. "Both of you would." He nodded, then turned serious. "Mom used to say good people disappear when the bad ones are loud. You didn't disappear, Miss Sarah." I didn't know what to say. The words caught in my throat. Later, as the sun dipped low over the Chesapeake Bay, I walked with Mark along the quiet pier. He looked exhausted but content. "You did good," he said. I smirked. "That's the closest thing to a compliment you've ever given me." He chuckled. "The Navy doesn't hand out medals for breaking rules, Cole, but sometimes breaking them saves more than following them ever could." We stood in silence for a while, listening to the gentle slap of the tide. Across the water, the flags on the academy buildings fluttered in the wind. "You ever think about leaving?" he asked. Sometimes, I admitted, but I think about my father and now these kids. And I realize maybe service doesn't always mean wearing a uniform. Sometimes it's just doing the right thing when no one's watching. He nodded. "Your dad used to say something like that, didn't he?" I smiled faintly. He wrote it once in a letter they found after he died. I got it back last week from records. "You mind if I ask what it said?" I recited it quietly, almost like a prayer. "The measure of honor isn't how strictly you obey orders, but how deeply you protect the innocent. The world remembers medals, but God remembers mercy." Mark didn't speak for a while after that. He just looked out toward the horizon. When I finally returned home to Mayport, the house felt different, emptier, but somehow lighter. I cleaned up, folded away the kids' blankets, and put their drawings in a single folder labeled Merit Case. I placed it beside my father's old leather box on the shelf. Then I sat on the porch watching the sunset bleed across the water and realized how strange redemption can be. It doesn't roar like victory. It whispers quietly in the space after justice. A seagull drifted across the orange sky. Somewhere in the distance, a ship's horn sounded a deep, resonant tone that reminded me of home. Maybe this was what reconciliation really looked like, not triumph, but peace. Before heading inside, I opened my laptop and typed one last entry into my journal, the kind of reflection I knew my father would have wanted me to write. We live in a world where power hides behind paperwork, where honor bends under convenience. But every once in a while, something small, a storm, a pair of lost eyes, a forgotten promise reminds us who we are meant to be. I was a soldier once, a daughter always, and now maybe just a witness to what mercy can fix. I closed the laptop, exhaled, and whispered into the fading light, "You can rest now, Dad. I finally understand." Then, as if the wind itself heard me, the flagpole outside caught a gust and unfurled the navy colors, blue and gold, gleaming in the sunset. And I smiled, because even storms can lead home. If you've listened this far, thank you. If you've ever stood up for what's right, even when it cost you something, you understand this story more than you know. Honor isn't about rank, it's about heart. If this story meant something to you, share it. Tell someone who's forgotten that compassion still matters. And if you believe like I do that mercy is stronger than revenge, then stay with us, subscribe, and keep the honor line alive.